Hi, so today I'm going to be reviewing the chapter one of The Second Shift by Arlie Hochschild and Anne Machung. I'll start by explaining some of the main concepts from the chapter, which includes the second shift as a topic, the stalled revolution, gender ideologies, the gender strategies, and family myths, just like the instructions say. Then I'll connect those ideas to the movie or TV show of my choice. I chose to compare it to Bridgerton because I've been watching that a bunch and I really enjoy the books and the show. When I first started reading this chapter, I honestly wasn't sure what to expect. I heard the term second shift before, but I never really knew exactly what it meant or why it became such an important sociological concept. But after reading chapter one, I understand that it's about much more than simply doing chores around the house. Start off, I'm going to just talk about like what is the second shift, especially my words, and who primarily takes care of this work. The first topic that these authors talked about or introduces is that term, the second shift. Basically, the second shift refers to the unpaid work people do after they finish their paid jobs. This includes things like cooking meals, cleaning the house, taking care of children, grocery shopping, scheduling appointments, remembering birthdays, helping with homework, and all the little things that keep a household running every single day. According to these authors, women are still the ones who perform most of this work, even when both spouses work full time outside the home. That's really the central argument of chapter one. Because it's so unfair. Like, women have entered the workforce in much larger numbers, but many of the responsibilities inside the home haven't changed nearly as much, if at all. One thing I thought was interesting is that the second shift isn't just physical work, it's also emotional work and mental work. Like, someone has to remember when it's time to buy groceries, schedule the doctor's appointments, figure out what's for dinner, remember everyone's activities, make all the calendars, make sure everything gets done. Like, those responsibilities usually aren't noticed because they're still happening behind the scene, but they're still like their work. That just doesn't get done. Like, there's no magical fairy that comes in and does this. But I also liked that these authors didn't simply say that husbands never help. Instead, they explained that many couples honestly believe they're dividing responsibilities fairly. The problem is that what feels fair isn't always what actually happens. Sometimes one spouse is carrying much more of the invisible work, and than the other person is actually realizing. I think this would be like, I think all this household work would be fine if both people weren't working the full-time jobs. Like, if someone's full-time job was managing the household, like, that would be acceptable for the other one not to do as much, like how it was in the past. The next topic I'm going to talk about was the second prompt. What do these authors mean by the stalled revolution? The next concept, the stalled revolution. They argue that society has changed in one major way, which is now women have many more opportunities to work outside the home and pursue careers than they ever have. However, the family expectations haven't changed at the same speed. In other words, women gained the first shift, which is paid employment, but they never really lost the second shift at home. That's why they call it a stalled revolution. The revolution towards equality started, but according to the authors, it never completely finished because the at-home isn't fair. I think this was probably one of the biggest ideas in the chapter because it explains so much about why so many working families experience stress. Like, if both spouses work all day, but one person still comes home and does most of the household responsibility, like, that's going to create tension between you, your kids, your spouse. Like, that's unavoidable. Even though I don't necessarily agree with every conclusion that these authors make, I can understand the point they're trying to make. Expectations inside families often change more slowly than changes happening in society. The next concept was the 3 gender ideologies. These are basically just different beliefs about what men and women should do within families. The first ideology is the traditional ideology, which is the husband is primarily responsible for earning money, while the wife is mainly responsible for taking care of the home and children. And then the second is the egalitarian, I think is how you pronounce that, ideology. Couples who believe this think responsibility should be shared more equally. They believe both partners can work outside the home and both partners should contribute to household responsibilities. And then finally, the authors talk about the transitional approach, which is like the couples who may believe in equality in theory, but in practice, they still divide work in fairly traditional ways. Their beliefs and their daily routines don't always match. I thought this section was interesting because it shows that what people believe and what people actually do aren't always the same thing. Like a couple might say they believe in equal responsibilities, but when you actually observe their daily lives, one partner is probably still doing way more of the work than the other. And then the fourth section was what is a gender strategy. A gender strategy is basically how people organize their lives to fit their beliefs about gender roles. People develop routines and habits that make their family work based on what they think men and women are supposed to do. For example, if a couple believes the husband should focus on work while the wife manages at home, they'll probably organize their daily life around those expectations or actually just like make that happen. On the other hand, if they believe responsibility should be shared equally, they'll likely divide the chores, childcare, and household decisions very differently. One thing I found interesting is that these strategies don't always happen intentionally. Sometimes people simply grow up seeing certain patterns and they continue the same patterns without really questioning them, like they're just acting like their parents did. And this shows how powerful family traditions and social expectations can be. Like that's the only reason we're still doing things that were done in the past, because you don't just lose that, like it's how you're raised. And the last major concept from chapter 1 was the family myths. Family myths are stories families tell themselves that explain why things are the way they are. These stories help families make sense of their routines and relationships. Sometimes these myths can be positive. They help families stay united, solve problems, and feel like everyone is working toward the same goals. But these authors also point out that the family myths can have negative effects. Like sometimes they hide inequalities or convince people that an unfair situation is actually fair. Like I've seen that in my own house. For example, a couple might tell themselves that household responsibilities are divided equally because the husband mows the lawn every weekend while the wife cooks, cleans, manages the children, schedules appointments, and handles everything else. Like that's the story of my household. Like my mom does all the inside work, but there's so much more inside work than there is outside work. Like my mom still does the landscaping and her gardening and her flower beds and all the bird feeders. Like she does all that outside. My dad just mows and, cleans up, does things that she can't because of the power tools or whatever. So it's just kind of crazy how, like, you believe it's equal, but it's not. But, like, they're both doing things that the other wouldn't want to do, so, like, they think it's fine. Like, I just think that's one of the most interesting parts of this entire chapter as a whole, because I felt that for my own personal life, and it shows how people interpret their own lives. Two people can look at the exact same household and come away with completely different opinions about whether the workload is fair. Now to hit on the second part of this assignment, which is talking about the TV show or movie that hits on multiple families and talks about the categories in this chapter. For the second part of my presentation, I decided to analyze Bridgerton. It's a show that I've been watching a lot. It's on Netflix, and it is set in the past for sure, so it actually does have really prominent traditional ideologies. I just really enjoy this. I think it hits on so many things in society, and I think it's so interesting. It has the romance, it has the gossip, it has the drama. It just has everything. It keeps me so entertained with everything. I'm a really big romance person, so I've read all these books and I've watched all the shows, like all the episodes so far in all 5 seasons that are out. Wait, no, it may only be 4 right now. I just read the 5th book, so at first, I wasn't exactly sure if this would actually fit for this, because this book talks about the kind of modern side of this, but after actually reading this first chapter, I realized it illustrates many of these concepts really well. even though the show takes place over 200 years ago. Like, it focuses heavily on family life, gender expectations, marriage, and the roles people are expected to play within their families. Like, that is the show in a nutshell. Like, the entire frame of Bridgerton revolves around what is often called the Marriage Mart. It's in London, and every social season is centered around finding suitable husbands and wives. And almost every family's future depends on making successful marriages. Right away, it's clear that men and women are expected to follow very different paths. Like, one can live one way, the other can't. Like, it's so different. It's kind of crazy. The first concept I noticed was the second shift that they were talking about. Obviously, the women in Bridgerton aren't balancing modern careers like the women these authors studied, but they're still doing an incredible amount of unpaid labor that keeps their families functioning. Like, sure, in this show, they're the wealthy, like, they have all the maids and staff, but they're still, like, Violet Bridgerton, for example, spends almost all of her time managing the household and taking care of her children. She prepares her daughters for society, gives relationship advice, helps organize social events, maintains family relationships, and tries to protect the Bridgerton's family, like, reputation. She also embroiders and, like, she does all the things. Like, she has to be the, I forget what they call it, the person who accompanies them. I forgot the word for it. But it's the person that has to accompany them, like, because a man and unmarried man and woman cannot be seen alone together. They have to have a chaperone. She does the chaperoning. Nobody pays her for any of this, but it's essential, like, to keeping the family together. The same thing happens with Portia Featherington. She is the neighbor to the Bridgertons. She's constantly worried about money, planning social events, finding husbands for her daughters, and making sure her family survives financially. She was really big in season 3, which focused on Colin and Penelope. She's always thinking ahead and carrying the emotional burden of making sure everything works out. Like, her daughters wouldn't even know there's an issue because she does such a good job of hiding it. So reading the second shift made me realize that's the kind of emotional labor that often goes unnoticed because it's expected. Like, the women are simply assumed to take care of these responsibilities. Another section I would say is in Bridgerton a lot is the stalled revolution, because, like, it's arguing that society changes faster than people's expectations inside the home. So even though Bridgerton takes place before modern feminism, you can still see characters who want more freedom than society is willing to give them. And the best example of that is definitely Eloise Bridgerton. She was so against the Marriage Mart. Like, she was just going to be a hipster, is what they call them. And she was, like, fully set on that. Like, throughout the series, she constantly questions why marriage has to be everyone's ultimate goal. Like, she wants an education, she wants to read, she wants to have her own opinions, and doesn't understand why women have so few opportunities compared to men. In one scene, she even asks why women are expected to settle down instead of pursuing something bigger with their lives. Like, I thought that was one of the clearest examples of someone pushing back against traditional expectations. I would say that specifically happened in every single episode. Like, she questions the marriage mart in every single episode. Lady Whistledown is another interesting example of this stalled revolution, even though she's one of the most influential people in society because everyone's reading her papers. Like, she has to remain anonymous because a woman openly holding that kind of influence wouldn't really be accepted at all. Like, through her gossip column, she constantly exposes the double standards between men and women and points out the hypocrisy of high society. She really puts everyone on blast. And then the next concept that this show really hits on is the gender ideologies, or people's beliefs about what men and women are supposed to do within families. Bridgerton is almost entirely built around a traditional gender ideology. Right from the first episode, which is like something, the Diamond or something, Daphne is introduced into society as a debutante. Like, Queen Charlotte judges the young women almost entirely on their appearance and whether they'll make suitable wives, like how they can present themselves. And then Violet reminds Daphne that finding a husband is one of the most important things she'll ever do. Like, that is the beginning. That is the pilot episode. Like, that is what this show starts with. Meanwhile, Anthony, the eldest brother of this family, immediately... For reference, Bridgerton is a show that revolves around a family that has 8 children, and each season focuses on each of the child's marriage into the marriage part, if that makes sense. Everyone expects Anthony to lead the family, protect his siblings, and make all the important decisions and, like, be the dad. and even have a say in who his sister is Mary because his dad died. Nobody questions that responsibility simply because it's expected of the oldest son. Like, it's the man of the house at that point. Those expectations aren't really personal choices at all. Like, you can tell there's quite a few characters in the show that push against that, but they're built into the entire society. These also hit on the gender strategies, and these are like, Kate Sharma is a great example of this. She's the one who eventually marries Anthony Bridgerton. She spends years putting her sister Edwina's future ahead of her own because she believes it's her responsibility to make sure her younger sister has the best possible life. She sacrifices her own happiness because that's the role she feels she's supposed to play. Anthony has the same strategy too, kind of. Instead of asking for help or sharing responsibility, he tries to carry everything himself because he believes that's what being the oldest man in his family requires. Like, even Daphne develops a strategy, and hers was very much like, I want to get married off to that highest whatever, like highest ranked, highest in the monarchy, I don't know. She ends up marrying a duke, so she works within society's expectations while still trying to make decisions for herself whenever she can. Like, instead of completely rejecting tradition, she learns how to navigate it to best fit her. And then the last concept I want to discuss for Bridgerton is the family myths. The Bridgertons often believe every decision they make is out of love and protection. Like, that is really their focal point, and they believe in love matches for marriage. Like, Anthony believes controlling his siblings is protecting them, while Violet believes preparing her daughters for marriage is giving them the best future possible. The Featheringtons have a very different family myth. They believe that marrying into wealth will solve all of their problems. That belief influences almost every decision they make throughout the series. Whether those beliefs actually lead to happiness is another question, but they do help explain why these families continue to behave the way they do, especially the Featheringtons. They were really driving me nuts. They made a lot of corrupt and evil moves while trying to regain their wealth. Overall, the show connects to the books because it follows basically the same structure of gender expectations and hits on how every family is doing it as well. The daughters are expected to marry, the sons are expected to provide leadership, and then the mothers manage households and maintain relationships. So I do think that Bridgerton ended up connecting really well to the second shift, even though one takes place in modern America and the other takes place during the Regency era in London. So I don't agree with every argument either source of media makes, but I think looking at society like this is really interesting, and it really shows how much gender plays a role in everything. Thank you.